Welcome, everyone. If you're into optimizing your habits and figuring out exactly how the most disciplined minds operate, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're unpacking a really radical financial strategy from our source material that pretty much challenges everything we typically hear about managing our money. Let's just dive right into the financial secrets of the world's most disciplined savers.
I want to kick things off by putting this massive number right in front of you, 90%. Now, this isn't a test score, and it's not some random completion metric. It's a savings target. We're literally talking about a strategy that aims to keep 90% of everything that comes in. I know it's a shocking, almost unbelievable number when you first hear it, right?
So, I have to ask you right now, could you save this much of your income? Honestly, if your heart just skipped a beat or you felt a sudden wave of panic at the mere thought of living off just a tiny sliver of your earnings, don't worry. That's a completely natural reaction to such an extreme figure. But before you write this whole thing off as totally impossible, we're going to break down how it actually works. Because as it turns out, there is a profound psychological safety net built right into this method. Section 1. The 10-to-1 rule. So this strategy is beautifully simple, yet intensely demanding. It's known as the 10-to-1 rule, which is a Chinese financial strategy where the core mechanic is exactly this. You aim to spend only 1 unit for every 10 units you earn. It demands just an extreme level of discipline. It's basically a complete inversion of how our consumption normally scales up with our income. For every $10 or $1,000 or $10,000 you earn, you're allowing yourself to consume just one single unit of that measurement.
Just think about the sheer weight of discipline this requires. On one side, you've got this microscopic allowance for consumption, just 1 unit spent. But on the other side, there's this massive requirement for income generation, 10 units earned. You're essentially starving your spending habits while aggressively feeding your earnings. It forces this complete mental block against lifestyle creep. You aren't just saving whatever happens to be left over at the end of the month. You're strictly allocating a tiny fraction for living and fiercely protecting the vast majority of it.
Section 2. Aiming for 90%. When we actually translate that 10-to-1 rule into a percentage, the ultimate goal becomes a staggering 90% savings rate. Mathematically, it makes sense, right? If you're only spending 1 unit out of every 10 you earn, you're holding on to the other 9. 9 out of 10 is 90%. This is the absolute peak of the mountain that this financial strategy is asking you to climb. It's setting the highest possible bar for financial discipline. Let the sheer weight of this 90% goal just sink in for a second. Think about the discipline, the daily choices, the absolute laser focus required to even attempt to retain 90% of everything you make. It's a colossal, towering objective. It creates a massive amount of tension just thinking about it. But remember how I mentioned earlier that there was a safety net?
Section 3. The power of failing high.
50%. Here is where the strategy reveals its true brilliance. The secret is you're actually allowed to fail. You can aim for that terrifying 90%, inevitably fall short, and still hit a 50% savings rate instead. You see, this strategy isn't really about being perfect at all. It's about violently shifting your baseline. When your goal is to save 90% and, life happens. Unexpected expenses pop up, necessary purchases need to be made, just the general realities of living, and you fall drastically short of your goal, your so-called failure means you still saved half of everything you earned. You failed all the way down to a 50% savings rate. By aiming so impossibly high in the first place, falling drastically short still yields absolutely massive, life-changing financial results.
Section 4. Beating the traditional model.
When we compare this failed state to traditional Western models, the contrast is just stark. Traditional advice often tells us to save 10 to 20% of our income. But even a 50% failure rate under this 10-to-1 strategy drastically outperforms perfectly executed traditional models. You are totally beating the standard system even when you're technically failing at your own system. So let's summarize this incredible paradigm shift. First off, you adopt the 10-to-1 mindset. Second, you aim for that staggering 90% savings rate. Third, give yourself the grace to fail at 50%. And fourth, you still absolutely crush the traditional savings models. It just reinforces exactly how aiming impossibly high makes falling short an overwhelming financial victory.
To truly solidify the power of this strategy, let's look at this core takeaway directly from the source material. Aiming for a 90% savings rate, even if you fail at 50%, still outperforms traditional Western models. It's basically a masterful psychological trick to ensure you win the game of saving, precisely by making the game so hard that even losing means you win. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought today.
How would changing your baseline change your life? If you stopped measuring your success by traditional models and instead aimed so high that your absolute worst-case scenario was still way better than average, what could you achieve? It's a really fascinating paradigm shift to consider for your own financial habits. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning those baselines, and I'll see you next time.